1,000-pound sisters. Chris confronts Tammy as deep family tensions rise and an emotional truth comes out. The Kentucky morning came in gray and heavy, the kind of damp that settles into your bones and makes you wonder if the sun ever really shines in this part of the world. In the small house that had once been a duplex divided between two sisters, the silence was deafening. Tammy Slaton sat in her chair, the one that had been custom-built to hold her frame, the one that had seen her through the darkest days when she couldn't walk, couldn't breathe, couldn't see a way forward. That chair had been her throne and her prison. Now, after losing over 500 pounds, it felt different. She felt different. But the silence? That was the same. Her phone buzzed on the table beside her. Another notification from the group chat. She didn't need to look to know what it would say. The same arguments, the same accusations, the same words thrown like grenades across the digital divide that had grown between her and the people she loved most. Every other word is an F-bomb, Chris had said about that group chat. Beep, 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 you beep, beep, beep ass. Tammy reached for the phone, anyway. Old habits. She scrolled through the messages she'd missed, a heated exchange between Amy and Misty about something stupid, something that didn't matter, something that had turned into yet another battleground. And there, at the bottom, was Amy's latest salvo. Something about the wedding. Something about how nobody supported her. Something about how Queen Tammy thought she was better than everyone else. The word stung, but Tammy was used to stinging. She'd been stung her whole life, by cruel comments, by her own failing body, by the weight of expectations she could never meet. She'd learned to build walls, to push people away before they could leave her. But Amy had always been different. Amy had been her partner in crime, her confidant, the only person who understood what it felt like to be the Slaton sisters, the ones everyone whispered about, the ones who weighed 1,000 pounds together, the ones who were always the punchline of someone's joke. She used to be my best friend, Tammy whispered to herself, and the words felt like stones in her throat. The front door creaked open, and Tammy didn't need to look up to know who it was. Chris Combs had a way of entering a room that demanded attention, his presence filling spaces like a force of nature. He was the oldest, the protector, the one who had always tried to hold the family together even when it was crumbling at the edges. "Mornin'," he said, his voice carrying that familiar warmth that had seen them through so much. He set down a bag of groceries, mostly healthy stuff, mostly things he'd researched to help with Tammy's new dietary needs. He'd been doing that more lately, trying to be the support system she needed now that Amy was gone. "Hey," Tammy replied, her voice flat. She still hadn't looked up from her phone. Chris studied her for a moment. He'd known her his whole life, had watched her struggle, had carried her when she couldn't walk, had sat by her hospital bed during the dark days when the doctors said she wouldn't make it. He could read her like a book, and right now the book was titled Something's Wrong. "All right, what happened?" he asked, settling into the chair across from her. "I can feel the tension from here. Somebody else get into it with somebody else." Tammy finally looked up, her eyes tired and red-rimmed. "The usual," she said. "Amy's on another rampage. Something about the wedding. Something about how we're all against her. Same story, different day." Chris sighed, rubbing his face with both hands. He'd aged in the last few years. The stress of managing this family, of watching his sisters tear each other apart, of trying to be the voice of reason when nobody wanted to listen. "What did she say this time?" "You don't want to know," Tammy said, setting the phone down. "She's calling me Queen Tammy again. Actin' like I'm the one causing all the problems, when all I ever did was tell her the truth about that man she's marrying." "Brian," Chris said carefully, "we've been over this. You don't like him. We get it. But she's made her choice." "She's making a mistake," Tammy interrupted, her voice rising. "And I ain't gonna sit there and pretend like I support it just to make her feel good. Somebody has to tell her the truth." Chris leaned forward, his expression shifting. This was the conversation he'd been dreading. The one where he had to be the mediator, the peacekeeper, the one who gets stuck in the middle of two sisters who couldn't see how much they were hurting each other. "Tammy," he said slowly, "we need to talk. Not about Amy. About you." Tammy's eyes narrowed. She knew that tone. It was the same one Chris used when he was about to drop a truth bomb, the kind that made you want to crawl out of your own skin. The kind that had saved her life more than once, even when she didn't want to hear it. "What about me?" she asked, her voice defensive. Chris took a breath, steadying himself. He'd been rehearsing this conversation for weeks, trying to find the right words, the right approach, the way to say what needed to be said without pushing her away. But there was no easy way to tell your sister that she was falling apart. "I've been watching you," he said. "And I gotta be honest, I'm worried. You've been on edge lately, lashing out at everybody who tries to get close to you. And don't tell me you ain't, because I got the text to prove it." Tammy crossed her arms, a gesture that used to be impossible for her. The skin removal surgery had changed her body, but the defensive instincts were still there. "So what? I got a right to be angry. My sister abandoned me in Pittsburgh when I needed her most, and now she's acting like I'm the bad guy? Like I'm the one who—" "Amy didn't abandon you," Chris cut in, his voice firmer now. "She left because Amanda was bullying her and she couldn't take it anymore. You know that." Tammy's jaw tightened. "That's what she told you? That she was being bullied?" "I was there, Tammy. I saw it with my own eyes. She was crying in the car, saying how nobody listens to her, how you all treat her like she's the problem. And instead of hearing her out, you flipped it around and made it about you." Tammy was quiet for a moment, processing his words. But the walls were already going up. She could feel them, the familiar weight of old patterns and deeper wounds that she'd learned to protect at all costs. "You don't understand," she said finally, "then help me understand," Chris said, leaning in. "Because I can't keep watching you two destroy each other. You're my sisters. I love you both. But you gotta stop acting like you're enemies." Tammy laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You think I want this? You think I wanted to lose my best friend?" Her voice cracked, and she hated it. Hated the weakness, the vulnerability, the way it made her feel small and out of control. "I didn't ask for any of this. I asked her to be there for me. I asked her to stay." And she walked out the door. "Amy's got her own life, Tammy," Chris said gently. "She's got 2 kids, a new husband, and her own problems. She can't be your caretaker forever. None of us can. That's the truth." The words hung in the air between them, heavy and uncomfortable. "Is that what this is about?" Tammy asked, her voice trembling. "You think I need a caretaker? You think I can't take care of myself?" "I think," Chris said carefully, "that you've been through a lot. And you've made a lot of progress. But I also think you're still holding on to things that are hurting you. And until you let him go, you're gonna keep pushing people away." Tammy stared at him, her eyes glistening. "I'm not pushing anybody away." "Really?" Chris pulled out his phone, scrolling through messages. "'Cause I got about 180 text messages from you and Amy going at it. And most of 'em ain't exactly friendly." Tammy's face flushed red. "She started it. She asked if you were going to the animal shelter, and you called her a f***ing child, a deadbeat mom, told her you was done with her. That's not starting it, Tammy, that's a skeleton." "She was acting like a child," Tammy shot back. "Backing out 'cause she got bit by a camel? Police. She's always got some excuse, some reason why she can't do what she promised." "PTSD ain't an excuse," Chris said flatly. "And you know it." The words hit Tammy like a slap. She opened her mouth to argue, but nothing came out. Because he was right. Of course he was right. She knew what it felt like to be afraid, to have something trigger that deep, primal panic that made you want to run and hide. She'd lived with that fear her whole life. And she'd just dismissed Amy's trauma like it was nothing. "That's different," she said finally, but her voice was softer now, less certain. "Is it?" Tammy looked away, staring at the wall. She could feel the tears building behind her eyes, the ones she'd been holding back for weeks. I don't know how to fix this, Chris. I don't know how to make things right." The silence that followed was different from before. It wasn't the cold, angry silence of 2 people ready to fight. It was something rawer, the silence of someone on the verge of breaking open. Chris sat forward in his chair, his voice dropping to something gentler. "You gotta talk to me, Tammy. Stop holding it all in. I can see you're struggling." Tammy wiped at her eyes with the back of her hand, a ragged breath escaping her lips. It's like, I'm feeling things I ain't ever felt before. And I don't know how to deal with them. I don't know, she said, her voice breaking. I lost all this weight, and I thought it would fix everything. I thought I'd be happy. And I am, I guess, but it's like underneath it all, I'm still the same broken person I always was. I still get angry. I still lash out. And then I hate myself for it. Chris nodded slowly, understanding dawning on his face. Amy said something similar once, about how losing the weight didn't fix what was inside. I know, Tammy whispered, and I know I've been hard on her, but she stopped, struggling to find the words. I thought she was the only one who understood. And then she left, and it felt like I was losing everything all over again. Amy ain't gone, Tammy.
She's angry, yeah.
But she ain't gone. You don't know that, Tammy said. You didn't see the way she looked at me, like I was just too much, like she was done with me forever. I saw it, Chris admitted, and it hurt me too. But I also saw her crying in the confessional, saying you was her best friend, and she didn't know how to fix things. Tammy's breath hitched. She said that. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The weight of everything, the years of fighting, the months of silence, the wounds that had never quite healed, pressed down on the room like a physical presence. I called her a deadbeat mom, Tammy said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. Why'd I do that? She's a good mom. She loves those boys more than anything. Because you was huttin', Chris said. And sometimes when we're huttin', we say the worst things we can think of. I didn't mean it. I never meant it. I know, Chris said. But she don't know that. All she knows is that you said it. And words like that, they stick. Tammy closed her eyes, and the tears finally came, hot and fast and unstoppable. She'd spent her whole life building walls, pretending she didn't care, acting like the tough one who didn't need anyone. But the truth was, she was terrified. Terrified of being alone. Terrified of losing the people she loved. Terrified that no matter how much weight she lost, she'd never be enough. I don't know how to say I'm sorry, she admitted. I never learned how. Chris reached over and took her hand, the same hand that had once been too swollen and heavy to lift, now small enough to hold. You start by saying it, he said, and then you show her you mean it. What if it ain't enough? Then you keep trying, Chris said. That's all any of us can do. The kitchen was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of the old house settling. Tammy sat at the table, a mug of coffee cooling in front of her, while Chris busied himself with breakfast. He was making eggs, scrambled with a little cheese, nothing that would derail her diet. It was a small act of care, but it meant more than he probably realized. I've been thinking, Tammy said finally. About what? About Amy. About the wedding. Maybe I should try calling her. Chris paused, spatula in midair. You serious? I mean, I ain't saying I'm ready to be her best friend again. But maybe I could apologize? For the stuff I said. For the deadbeat mom thing. Chris nodded slowly, a small smile forming on his face. That'd be a good start. Tammy took a deep breath. I'm scared, Chris. Scared of what? Scared she won't answer. Scared she'll hang up on me. Scared she'll tell me it's too late. Those are all real possibilities, Chris admitted. But you ain't gonna know unless you try. Tammy was quiet for a moment, staring at her phone. The screen showed the thread of messages between her and Amy. The last one had been days ago, a terse exchange that had ended with Amy saying she was done with Tammy. The last time we really talked, she said slowly, was when I was recovering from the surgery. I was in Pittsburgh, she was supposed to be there, and she just left. And you felt abandoned.
Yeah.
I did. I know, Chris said. And I know that hurt. But you gotta understand, Tammy. Amy left 'cause she was being bullied. By Amanda, by you, by everyone who was telling her she wasn't good enough. She was acting out of self-preservation, not out of hate. Tammy processed his words, rolling them around in her head. So, she wasn't trying to hurt me.
No.
She was trying to protect herself. There's a difference. Tammy nodded slowly. I've been so stuck in my own head, thinking about how I felt, that I never stopped to think about how she felt. Welcome to being an adult, Chris said with a wry smile. It ain't always comfortable, but somebody's gotta do it. Tammy laughed despite herself. It was a small sound, fragile and new, but it was real. You're annoying, you know that? Somebody's gotta be the annoying big brother. It's a gift. Over the call button for a long, agonizing moment. Her heart was pounding, her palms were sweating, and every instinct she had was screaming at her to stop. You got this, Chris said from across the table, his voice steady and reassuring. I don't got this, Tammy said. I'm a mess. Then be a mess, Chris said. Be a mess and call your sister. Worst case scenario, she don't answer. Best case scenario, you start fixin' what's broken. Tammy took a shaky breath, and then she pressed the button. The phone rang once.
Twice.
3 times. Hey, you've reached Amy. Tammy's stomach dropped as she heard the voicemail message. She almost hung up, but then, I can't come to the phone right now, but leave a message and I'll get back to you. Probably.
Beep.
Tammy opened her mouth, but the words wouldn't come. She could feel Chris watching her, could feel the weight of everything she needed to say pressing down on her chest. Amy, she finally said, her voice small and shaky. It's Tammy. I know you probably don't want to hear from me. And I know we've been fightin'. I know I've been ABH. I said stuff I shouldn't have said. And I'm sorry. She paused, tears streaming down her face. I'm so sorry, Amy. I didn't mean what I said. You're a good mom. And I was out of line. I was huttin', and I took it out on you. And I hate myself for it. Tammy wiped at her eyes, trying to steady her voice. Anyway, if you're willin' to talk, I'd like to try. I ain't sayin' I'm perfect, and I ain't sayin' I'm gonna be better overnight.
But I want to try.
For real this time. She paused again, her voice cracking. You as my best friend, Amy. And I miss you. I miss you so much it hurts. So call me back. When you're ready. I ain't going nowhere. She hung up, her hands trembling. The room was quiet, the only sound her own ragged breathing. Chris was smiling, a big, genuine smile that lit up his face. I'm proud of you, he said. That wasn't easy. Tammy sniffled, wiping her eyes again. It was the hardest thing I ever did. And I had surgery. Surgery's easy, Chris said with a laugh. Talkin' about your feelin's? That's the real hero stuff. Tammy laughed, and it felt like a release, a letting go of all the tension and anger and hurt she'd been holding on to. Maybe things still weren't okay. Maybe they'd never be perfect. But it was a start. The next few days were quiet. Tammy checked her phone obsessively, waiting for a call back, a text, anything. But Amy didn't reach out. Chris could see her starting to spiral, the old doubts creeping back in. Maybe she ain't ready yet, he said gently. And that's okay. You planted the seed. Now you gotta let it grow. I hate waitin', Tammy grumbled. Who don't? Tammy busied herself with other things, appointments with her doctor, exercise sessions that were easier now than they'd ever been, phone calls with Andrea that helped her feel grounded. But the silence from Amy was a constant presence, a wound that still hadn't healed. Then, on the 4th day, her phone buzzed. Tammy's heart nearly stopped when she saw the name on the screen.
Amy.
She stared at it for a moment, her thumb hovering over the answer button. The fear was still there, the fear of rejection, of being hurt again, of opening herself up and getting nothing in return. But she'd come too far to stop now. Hey, she said, her voice trembling. Hey yourself. Amy's voice was cautious, guarded. But there was something underneath it, a flicker of the old warmth, of the connection they'd shared for so long. I owe to your voicemail, Amy said slowly. It took me a few days to process it. Yeah, Tammy said. I figured. I've been thinking a lot, Amy continued. About us. About everything. And I've been mad, Tammy. I've been so mad. But I also been sad. 'Cause I miss you too. Tammy felt a sob building in her chest. I really am sorry, Amy. For everything. For calling you a deadbeat mom. for actin' like I was the only one with problems, for not seein' what you was goin' through. You was goin' through a lot yourself, Amy said. I should be just left. I should have talked to you instead of running away. Maybe we both made mistakes, Tammy admitted. But I don't want to keep making them. I want my sister back. Amy was quiet for a moment, and Tammy could hear her crying on the other end of the line. I want my sister back too, Amy said finally. I want my best friend back. Tammy closed her eyes, letting the tears fall freely. Let's work on that, okay? One step at a time. One step at a time, Amy agreed. But, Tammy? Yeah. I'm still not going to that animal shelter with you. Tammy laughed, a real laugh, full of surprise and relief. I ain't askin' you to. Good, Amy said,